Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now in today's video, it is going to be, let's just say, I don't want to call it a stretch, but just bear with me. It's a big loop, all right? I'm sure all of you know, we're going to cover a couple of subject matters, but I'm sure all of you know, today is August 1st. Well, in Massachusetts, the governor had signed that dystopian gun control bill, and it goes into full effect today. So for all my viewers that are living up in Massachusetts, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you're living through this, and it's going to take years to undo this god-awful law they got rammed through that is clearly unconstitutional and has precedent in Supreme Court cases that have said these types of laws are unconstitutional. But of course, your politicians ignore this and just move forward with everything. Why am I bringing that up? Well, besides it taking effect today, this plays into not only today, but our future. And how do we know what our future holds? Well, it's pretty simple. All we have to do is look at Venezuela. Right now, there are massive protests going on. The people are up in arms, not really because they don't have any arms. They were all taken away, and we'll get into that. But the people are basically in the streets rioting because they feel as if they've been cheated, as if they were gypped, and we'll get into why. Just in case you don't pay attention to the news, I'm going to cover it real quick and kind of show you how it's going to play into our future if we're not careful. But before I do that, I just wanted to say, please subscribe to the channel, like it, comment, share it with your friends. Best way to support the channel is to hit up the merch store down in the description below and in the little tagged products wherever it pops up. You can find links to the merch store and get awesome merch like this. Just so you know, all the proceeds for this particular shirt right here will actually be going to the Reverent Warriors of Connecticut Silky Hike. So any profit that is made off of this shirt is getting donated to them. So if you want to donate, you can donate directly to them, or you can pick up one of these shirts and some others and help a good cause out. All right, that being said, let's get into what is going on currently in Venezuela. So, they had an election. We'll call it an election. And it didn't go exactly the way everybody thought it was going to go. All right, so let's talk about some of the bigger problems first. All right, Venezuela is currently a very strict socialist country. Now, it used to not be this way. It used to be actually one of the richest countries in Central America. It was like the 4th richest nation in the world. Right? No one's going to beat America. America's always going to be number 1. For now. China, though, is creeping up. So in the 50s, they really nationalized what made them rich. So I have some printouts I have to go through. All right, just so I could get everything together. Let's put it all into context. All right, geologists from the Royal Dutch Shell Company struck oil in 1922. All right, fast forward into the 70s, where President Perez had created a state-run oil company. So what boiled down to was different companies from around the world pretty much owned all the crude oil. Venezuela was raking in the money, people had jobs, but Venezuela themselves didn't own the oil because these private entities owned the land or leased the land and they controlled the oil. So they decided that they were going to pretty much nationalize everything. So what they did was they kicked these corporations out and they took over the bulk or all of the oil production in Venezuela. And everything would, run smoothly, right? Because they collect all the money. Well, that's not exactly how it worked because we all know in the 70s there was a massive oil crisis. And obviously, since it's state controlled, they were not apt to adapt and overcome. And basically, their economy fell apart because, a private corporation has to adapt and overcome. Otherwise, they'll go out of business. And that's the last thing they want to do. Versus a government, they don't care. You can see it in our own government. All right. So fast forward to when Chavez took over. So Chavez took over. He raised oil income tax on all foreign companies within Venezuela that were mining. They were mining and drilling and all that. They raised the minimum wage, redistributed land from any other corporation to the people. And one thing they did, you'll love this one, is they fired thousands upon thousands of workers and replaced them with loyal supporters of Chavez who had zero experience in the oil industry, which absolutely wreaked havoc on, because they had no idea what they were doing. They weren't engineers or petroleum engineers. They never worked on these machines. They never ran this type of company. They just put in people that were loyal. All right. You see this time and time again. They just did this in South Africa, where they took the land from the white farmers and then gave it to the indigenous people who knew nothing about farming, and now people are starving. But I digress. Okay? You can't just give stuff to people that have no idea what they're doing with it. But whatever. All right? So, in the early 2000s, Chavez took control of everything in Venezuela. It suffocated all private enterprise. Price controls prevented private businesses from setting their own prices based on like OPEC, supply, demand, etc. And everything fell apart. All right. Chavez's vice president, Nicolas Maduro, rose to power. Now, fast forward to today, okay? And I'm sure you guys in the comments are going to pick apart that last section, but fast forward to today. So we know the country is socialist. Nobody's happy. People are starving. They are poor. And the GDP hasn't grown while all the surrounding countries, the GDP has grown by leaps and bounds. They're stagnant. Super duper poor. The people were sick and tired of this. So, it was election year. You had Maduro running and his opponent Gomez. Now, Gomez was reformist. He was going to change everything, get away from socialism, get back to pretty much a capitalist system with things that worked. Maduro said no. Well, the exit polling that came out last week showed that the vast majority of people were voting for Gomez. The night of the election, when they were tallying everything, it was right around probably like 9, 10 o'clock. And 80% of the polls were in, and the breakdown was like 65% was for Gomez, and like 30 some odd percent was for Maduro. Okay? So, clearly, Gomez is going to win. So around 9, 10 o'clock or so, the poll workers, who are loyalists, decided they were too tired to continue, and they would pick it up in the morning. So they retired for the evening. All right. Now, there are witness reports that they saw government officials or soldiers carrying boxes in and out of these polling places where they're counting and tallying the votes. Fast forward to the next morning, the workers show up to count everything, and miraculously, out of the blue, Maduro overwhelmingly won. Now, it made no damn sense, because when you looked at the reports from the night before, there was no way Maduro was going to win. But he won by a lot. So Maduro took that as a referendum on what he was doing. Okay? So the people lost their damn minds because they know something isn't right. And hell, even the international community is calling out this election, saying that it's corrupt. And I'm not going to run parallels to our 2020 election, but, you know, just saying, things look a little weird. So, the people are revolting in the streets. They're rioting. It's very violent. People are dying left and right because the military's opened fire on them. Things are bad, all right? Now, how are the people defending themselves? You'll see photos. They're using slingshots. They're just throwing things, and that's about all they can do, because Venezuela has super strict gun control. Basically, everything's been banned. And if you know your history, anytime a country bans and seizes all the firearms, eventually the government runs roughshod over the people. Now, back in 1914, Venezuelan government decreed a disarmament. Okay, they said in the federal district itself, you can't have guns, but the outskirts were okay. Then, fast forward to 1919, they pretty much said, okay, all of the country can't have guns outside of machetes and like a hunting shotgun. And this was to reduce crime. Okay? In 2012, Venezuela finally just banned private sales of firearms and ammunition with the intention of lowering crime rates again. The army, the police, and certain groups that were trusted by the government were, of course, exempt. And they literally came out and said, the only people who should carry guns are government agents. Nothing ominous there. Nothing at all. So, key takeaways. Venezuela disarmed their citizens under the guise of, we're going to reduce crime. And then the government just run roughshod. Literally, they stole an election, clearly stealing it just a few days ago, and the people are defenseless because the government has a monopoly on violence. They control all the guns, and Maduro is basically installed Maduro-loyal people. So when he gives the order to crush the rebellion, crush the rioting people, what do you think they're going to do? You think they're going to be like, well, our Constitution, our laws say we can't, they have a right to peaceably assemble, blah, blah. No. They're going to go out there and they're just going to crush them because they're part of the group that has, and they'll be damned if they're going to be thrown into the group of the have-nots, like the rest of the country. Okay, what's this got to do with anything? It's pretty simple. Kamala Harris, who is the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party, has openly come out and declared that she wants not only universal background checks, national red flags, which I've broken those down and how they can be abused. She wants a mandatory buyback of AR platforms and the like immediately. She said that if Congress does not act within the first 100 days, then she, through decree, will sign presidential order to just buy back the stuff. Now, it's kind of hard to buy back anything because the government never owned it, so they're not buying it back. They're just confiscating it. And now they said, hey, we're going to give you... not fair market value, but we'll give you compensation. So don't be surprised if you get some BS gift card for like $20 to like Chuck E. Cheese or, J.C. Penney's or something. Basically, they'll give you money or gift cards for a company that probably went out of business like a decade ago, because that's how the government is. All right. There are numerous videos out there where you can see her giving speeches or giving interviews where she calls for some of the most drastic gun control measures under the guise of preventing gun violence or gun crimes. In fact, when she came out and announced that she had the delegates to secure the nomination, numerous groups against gun violence came out to support her. Just looking for the list. Brady and Giffords, those two, the Brady campaign and the Giffords gun control group, were followed by Everytown and the Community for Justice Action Fund, Newtown Action Alliance, which that's local, among many others, have come out in total support for her because she has probably the most radical gun agenda of any of the politicians. All right? So, if she is elected, be prepared for them to go after your guns. Because that's what they're going to do. I mean, look at what Massachusetts just did, coming back to that, where they literally banned something like 90% of all semi-automatics, right? They said, hey, we have a government list. This is what you're allowed to buy. We're not saying you can't have semi-automatic rifles or semi-automatic shotguns. They just have to be on this list. Well, guess how many are on the list? 0, which means you can't have any. They didn't ban them. They're not authorized to be sold. So that's banning them. So we know a couple of weeks ago that some special person took a shot at Trump. Thank God they narrowly missed him, just grazing his ear. Now, you think after something like that, Trump might come out and cry for gun control and talk about doing away with the evil assault weapons and such. Never did. At all. He's a believer in the Second Amendment as far as we can tell. All right? Time will tell. I mean, he is the same guy that just tried to unilaterally ban bump stocks, which is unconstitutional. It's just been found unconstitutional. I don't agree with that. So, his stance on the Second Amendment isn't stellar, but it's a lot better than Biden and Harris. And did you know this? That in the following days of Trump being shot, there was a massive Google search across the country for terms like Civil War, Civil War II. So, I seriously think that if Trump was shot and killed, that the government would use that as an excuse to clamp down on our gun rights so fast it would make your head spin. And thank God it didn't happen, but I think they're really miffed that they had that missed opportunity. And I really think that if something like that happened and the government were to come after the firearms, that it would not bode well for either side, because Americans have a very special relationship with their guns. It is ingrained in who we are. Other countries like Venezuela, like Australia, Great Britain, when they say, hey, we're banning all guns, turn them over, we're confiscating them, people didn't care. They're like, sure, whatever, here you go. All right? UK did it under the guise of, hey, we don't want gun violence in our lives. Okay? Sure. They just had a mass stabbing where 3 children were killed, numerous others were hurt, because nobody's got guns, but they're all using knives now. So it is really, really scary. Because people are just running around in the street stabbing each other, using machete or what they call the zombie knives. And it's just pandemonium. It is horrible, and now they're talking about common sense knife control. Here they talk about common sense gun control, but now in England it is common sense knife control because, we got to be safe from knife violence. And that's one of the things that they call for here, not knives, but that we should be safe from gun violence because you need to trade your freedom for the idea of safety. It's not going to make you any safer because criminals do criminal things. By their very nature, they're criminals. And of course, when the government decides to turn on their own people, you are left defenseless. You will be able to do nothing. And they will just run roughshod all over you, trampling your rights because, listen, the government has morphed into some dystopian 1984 Brave New World amalgam where they believe your constitutional rights that are ingrained in the Bill of Rights are a nuisance and they're in the way of their power. They're in their way of progressing our country forward. They've so much as admitted that. So, times are going to be interesting. Obviously, we talked about Venezuela erupting, and honestly, if you're not careful, that is our future. Because we have one side that is calling for massive gun control, and the other side that hasn't called for it, but I still don't trust them. So the point is, if you've got this far, this November, don't sit on your ass and stay at home. Go vote. Because your vote literally could tip the balance of power in our country, and we can go down one path or the other. Now, if you're wanting the government to control your life 24/7, 365, you want them to take away your guns, tell you what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, where you can go, where you can't go, then either don't vote or vote for Harris. Hey, that's your choice. If you're not willing to give up your freedoms for that illusion of safety, because trust me, it's just going to be an illusion, then you're going to want to vote the other way. But you do you. I know who I'm voting for. It's none of your business. You vote for who you need to vote for. You vote for what you believe in. Doesn't matter if it's for one side or the other, third party. Libertarian, even though they are psychotic sometimes. Just get out and vote because the world's on fire, the country's teetering. If I were you, I'd be preparing because I have no idea what's going to happen come November. I mean, hell, I heard on the news last night that Israel killed the Hamas leaders, and now they did it in Iran. With a drone strike, and now Iran is calling for retribution on Israel and its allies. That would include us. So, you're looking at civil war, you're looking at World War III, and I'm telling you, it's a wild time. It's definitely a curse. May you live in interesting times. Well, you are right smack dab in the middle of the interesting times. Country's teetering on collapse. The economy is probably going to implode. Economic reports talking about, a massive bubble popping next year, and literally the stock market crashing by at least 86%. So, God only knows what's going to happen. But my advice to you, I'd prepare and have a game plan, because if you don't, God help you. All right, that's all I have for you guys today. I will see you all in the next video.